Welcome back. Moving on, let's now talk about the REST pattern and also REST parameters. And the REST patterns looks exactly like the spread operator. So it has the same syntax with the three dots, but it actually does the opposite of the spread operator. Now that doesn't seems to make much sense, right? But let me explain. So remember that we use the spread operator to build a new array or to pass multiple values into a function. So those are the two cases of the spread operator. In the both cases, we use the spread operator to expand an array into individual elements. Now the rest patterns, we use the exactly same syntax, however, to collect multiple elements and condense them into an array. So that's really the opposite of spread. The spread operator is to unpack an array, while the rest is to pack elements into an array. Since that sounds really confusing, let's write some code. Let's start by exploring the use case of building an array. So let's just recap. In the last lecture we used spread array like this. So let me write it here. So this is how we wrote in the last lecture, right? So we wanted to create a new array based on existing array. So we use the spread operator to expand that. So here we are still using the spread syntax, and we know this is the spread syntax because we are using it on the right side of the assignment operator of which is here the equal sign here. So let me actually write that here. Spread, because on right side of the okay. However, we also use it on the left hand side of the assignment operator together with destructuring. So now we are mixing kind of everything together here, but bear with me here. Let's say that we are destructuring this array. So let me just say here const 1 2 3 4 and 5. And so let's say that I want to take the first element and store it in variable A, and the second element to the store it in variable B. And now I can use here the rest pattern. So the same syntax. Now let's call this the others. So apart from 1 and 2, we are just calling these the 3 4 5 as others. And so here the rest syntax, because on the left hand side of the assignment operator. So here we write this. So we are declaring A, B, and others equals to, we are setting this. See here, we got the output here. So what is happening here is, well, just like before, the first and the second element becomes the first and second variable, but then here comes the rest pattern. So this is called the rest pattern because it will take the rest of the elements, so the remaining elements of the array, and then put them into a new array. So in this case we call this the array others. As I said in the beginning, the rest pattern basically collects the elements that are unused in the destructuring assignment. So let's see another example here. So this will show you that we can actually use the three dots on the both sides of the assignment operator. So let's say that we have this array which will be the entire menu, and so we already know how to build that using the spread operator. Now we'll go to this restaurant.menu, and then we'll write. So here I'm writing the code. So let's say here restaurant.main menu, and then dot starter menu. So let's set this into square brackets here, and we are setting this here. Here we'll declare these variables into these are from and the first element, and here and and then here the interpreter we are selecting the other food. Other food. Yeah, here we forgot to mention here restaurant. Yes, restaurant dot starter menu. Yeah, now we got the code here. So wait. Here we got pasta, right? So we don't want pasta. Then here we'll simply create a empty space. See, then here we got a risotto, like I just mentioned earlier. So we created a variable called a pizza and then skipped one variable and then a hole in the destructuring assignment, and then we called one variable risotto and then simply put all the other food into an array. So indeed we get here the string pizza and here the string risotto and then the rest of the elements. Okay. Note here that the rest syntax collects all the array after the last variable. So in this case here the risotto, yeah, again as I said, it does not include any skipped elements. So for the reason the rest pattern always must be the least in the destructuring assignment, because JavaScript will know until when it should collect the rest of the array, right? For example, here what we can't do is after here declaring, if we declare here a variable bread, for example, and let's just say it. See here, the rest element must be the last element. After this rest element, you cannot declare any variable. Okay, so it gives us the syntax error. So the error message is actually very explicit. So the rest elements must be the last element, all right. And also for the same reason, there can only ever be one rest in any destructing assignment. Okay. Now let's do the same in objects. Okay. Here, let's just say here objects, because it works indeed in objects. So the difference then of course is the remaining elements will be collected into a new object and not into a new array. So let's work here with our opening hours from our example, and let's say that we want to select only Saturday here. Okay, and then the rest should go into a new object which are the weekdays. Basically take out a Saturday into a own variable, and then we simply collect the rest into a new object, and this we can call weekdays. Great. Now we know the rest pattern works to collect elements in destructuring assignment, right? So let me just go ahead and write here the code. So let's just say here constant. I'm declaring here Saturday and then weekdays equals to restaurant dot opening hours, and here I'll say console.log weekdays. As you can see here, other than Saturday, we are just bringing out, right? So other than Saturday, this was looping here in one element, right? Which is Thursday and Friday. So remember that for the spread operator, the second use case was to pass multiple arguments into function at the same time. That's exactly what we did here in our real example with the ingredients array. So this is how we use the destructuring here. So let me just grab everything from here to here. So this all comes under destructuring, right? So I'm here dividing here into two parts. One is destructuring, and then here in the second part we will say the function. Okay. So in the function we are going to write now. So in this function, let me just add here the example constant. Let me just say here add, and I am declaring this into the function of. So let's just leave it like this, and let me show you what we want to call this function, and we will be able to use this test pattern. In this case it's called rest parenthesis. So let me just show you how we want to call this function. For example here, let me just say out of this here function, Let's add some variables 2, 3, and add 5, 3, 7, 2. Some random numbers. Okay, you can do as your own numbers: 8, 2, 5, 3, 2, 1, 4. So let's add here the constant, add the function here. So in this function we are giving here the numbers. So here we'll give the numbers. See, when I print this output, as you can see here, it returns the three arrays. So what we see here is the three arrays with all the arguments that we passed into the function, but they are indeed an array. And so now, once again, as I said in the beginning, the rest syntax is taking multiple numbers or multiple values and then packs all of them into one array. So once more, it is doing the opposite of the spread operator. So with the spread operator, we expand; with the rest syntax, we compress. So here it is called the rest arguments. Okay, and now we are going to write some simple logic here to actually add all the numbers together. I believe we already did that. So here in our some variables that's going to be accumulating, then let's write a simple loop for it. Here we call this function, we are able to use this rest pattern in the case. In this case, we are able to use the rest pattern, right? So in this case, it is called rest parameters. For let sum equals to 0, we are setting it, and also here for y equal to 0, and then here I greater than, and then here we are using the numbers as right, numbers dot length, so it will automatically take this and all we have already learned in the previous sections, so no need to repeat all that. And then here we'll use sum plus or equals to numbers of I, and then here we'll console dot not row numbers, here we'll do the sum, not for. Okay, yeah, here for let. As you can see here, before we got all these three values, right? So this is the sum of all the three values here. So 2 plus 3 here 5. Similarly, this string values adds up to 17. This here gets adds up to 25 here. Okay. And then here, let's also take this one step further. Let's create another array. Constant x equals to, here we'll say 23, 5, and 7. Okay. And then here we'll add. See, as you can see here, for this one as well, we have declared here outside. So here we got our value here 35. So we are taking all the numbers of the array and spreading them here. So this would be the same as writing manually to 23, 5, and 7. So this is a very good example of showing you how the spread is the opposite of the rest, because these numbers being spread, then they will enter this add function here and they will immediately be collected into this numbers array by the rest parameters. Okay, here we unpack the values and here pack them back again into the array, and you could actually be wondering why we are not simply writing an add function which takes an array as an argument, and then we don't need all this, right? Well, it's better way of doing like this, because the function can accept both an array basically by doing this and simply all the single elements like this as well. Also, it feels a little bit more natural to pass as in many arguments as we want to add together into this function. So without having to deal with the arrays, we don't want the rest parameters is something that we will see all the time in modern JavaScript basics. Okay, now just to finish this, let's actually use rest parameters in our restaurant example here. Also to see some edge cases, let's add another method here. This time method is going to be ordering pizza. pizza function of, in this function we are writing main ingredient, comma, we are dot other ingredient. So let me just save that. So here the order pizza, and now pizza needs to have one least ingredient, right? So, but the other ingredients are optional, and for the rest parameters are perfect. So let's say main ingredient and then the other ingredient, and this is going to work little bit like destructuring again, where this here basically we collect all of the rest of the arguments into an array. So let's see that. So the main ingredient that's logged the other ingredient. Okay. So now let's order pizza. So here we'll write our code. Here we'll say restaurant dot order pizza. Yeah, order pizza. And then here we'll say mushroom and then onion and then olives and then spinach. Here we have declared main ingredient as mushroom, and then the other ingredients as onions, olives, and spinach. As you can see here, the main ingredient here is mushroom, and the other ingredients is declaring here in this array format. Okay, so that we get mushrooms, which is the first ingredient here, and then we get an array of all the remaining ingredients that we passed in. And so of course the result of the rest of the arguments. So again the first argument was stored into the main argument here, and then the remaining arguments that were passed in were simply stored into here this array by the rest parameters of syntax. Okay, of course we could also simply just define this uh, restaurant dot order pizza, and we could simply say mushroom. So basically what happens here is we declared only here the main ingredient only, right? So the main ingredient was declared here as the mushroom. So we haven't declared here any other ingredients. So basically it gives us an empty array. So there is nothing here in this array. So it just gives empty array. So of course we could also simply just define one, but I'm not going to do that right now. But if you want to do that, you can try it out anyway. Let's take away from this example is that once again the rest parameters serves to collect all of the remaining basically unused parameters that we are not used in the parameter. All right, so let's recap what we have done in this video. So the spread and the rest syntaxes both looks exactly the same, but they work in the opposite ways depending upon where they are used. So the spread operator is used when we would otherwise write values separated by a comma. On the other hand, the rest pattern is basically used where we would otherwise write variable names separated by commas. So again, the rest pattern can be where we could write variable names separated by commas, not values separated by commas. So it's a subtle distinction, but this is how you know when and where to use the spread and rest operators. So that's it for this video.